Hello, this is Epicurus A. Greek. I decided to make a video detailing the No True Scotsman fallacy. With all the recent drama that's been going around considering one user named G-Man, I decided to take this time and inform everybody about the No True Scotsman fallacy on both sides of the debate, both atheist and theist alike, because I've noticed that on both sides there's only a partial understanding of the fallacy and how it's implemented, and I'm here to give a demonstration on how to properly use the No True Scotsman. The fallacy is usually illustrated along the lines of a Scotsman who picks up a newspaper and sees that there has been a story reported of a murder. He comments to himself, "No Scotsman would ever commit a murder." The next day, he figures out that it was in fact a Scotsman who did the murder. He says to himself, "Yes, but no true Scotsman would ever commit a murder." Now, most people take this illustration to mean something along the lines of somebody adding an extra clause at the end of it, which negates the fact of somebody qualifying under that certain category. This is not technically the case. Nor is it the case of somebody wanting classification underneath that category and other people denying them classification. To illustrate the second fraudulent example, let's take a case of somebody who's really stupid and tries to convince themselves that they're an atheist, while at the same time saying they believe in all the things that Christians believe. Now, if someone were to say, "Hey, because you believe in all those Christian things, you can't be an atheist." Well, that's true. A Christian, by definition, is not an atheist because there are certain things like belief in God which bar them from entrantship underneath that category of atheism, the lack of belief of God. Now, the first claim I was kind of discussing earlier was the notion that a No True Scotsman is somebody putting on an extra category at the end to kind of buffer the definition. Now, the first claim I was kind of discussing earlier was the notion that a No True Scotsman is somebody putting on an extra category at the end to kind of buffer the definition. While this is true some of the time, it is not true all of the time. It would depend on whether or not that person would have added said category before or after the fact. Just to go back to our illustration of a No True Scotsman, imagine if the murderer found was indeed a Scotsman, yet he was an immigrant to Scotland and gained citizenship later on in his life. Now the accuser, if he was perhaps a Scottish nationalist, would probably not have considered immigrants into Scotland to actually be Scottish themselves. Thus he would kind of have a way to get around this notion, but it would be a way to get around this notion before the fact and not after. What clinches something as falling under the No True Scotsman fallacy is whether or not the definition is made ad hoc, or after the fact, after all things are considered, that is. Because the second example is kind of important in the theist-atheist kind of discussion, I'm going to turn to a point that's more commonly made. Usually what happens is an ex-Christian or a former Christian comes in, declares themselves to be once at their lives a Christian. This is met with disdain from the Christian who says, "No, that's not true. No true Christian would have ever left the faith." Now at this point, it seems very obvious and intuitive for us to throw out the No True Scotsman fallacy. The problem is, it need not apply to all Christians. In some Christian circles, there is already an a priori established doctrine called preservation of the saints. It is the P in John Calvin's tulip. Now, many Christians already hold on to this idea before the challenge of the ex-Christian is made. Thus, it escapes being part of the No True Scotsman fallacy. To put simply, John Calvin's P, or preservation of the saints, illustrates the fact that once a person has repented and been born again, they are unable to be apostates or leave the church, because God's grace is so irresistible, they'll want to stay forever. However, this does not mean that they will not be able to be apostates for some short periods of their lives. It could be the case that an apostate leaves the church but comes back. However, it still remains the fact that the Calvinist, or the Christian who holds on to preservation of the saints, is fully within their rights to suggest that the person who identifies as an ex-Christian could not really be an ex-Christian because no true Christian would leave the faith. Thus, they would escape the No True Scotsman fallacy as a result, because their definition of a Christian is constructed prior to the fact, and not after the fact to avoid a messy situation. In conclusion, thank you for watching this video, and I hope you take this opinion to heart. If you disagree with my classification and definition of the No True Scotsman fallacy, please feel free to discuss this below. For more reading, a link will be provided down in the description bar. Thank you for joining in.